Affirm.
Okay.
Hey everybody, so it's been a long night. Lots of
014744. 147.
You've had. I'm sorry, I am exhausted staying up with this, but I figured I'd start my stream. We're at T minus 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes.
Straight into terminal count.
We've had naturally a hydrogen leak. We've had
Liftoff now,
network
9 minutes
issues with the Ethernet, among some other delays. And we're finally here. I'm not expecting actually really anybody to help out at this point, but
ground launch sequencer, a computer and software that is
we will see
all the commanding
what happens.
and monitoring of the space launch system.
I'm so excited.
We'll hear call-outs from the GLS operator, Alex Pandalos. As well as NASA Test Director Jeff Spaulding. GLS is pre-tensioning the umbilicals at this very moment. You can see them as they run down the rocket. That's getting them ready to detach. At liftoff, those arms will swing away. We'll let go of the rocket in a clockwise direction.
Looks great. The rocket looks great.
T-minus 8 minutes and counting. The GLS is performing up to 100 commands per second, including configuring ground systems for power transfer to the rocket.
Hey everybody, wow, we're getting some
GLS is turning on cameras, recording video inside and outside the crew module to collect data for engineers.
What a big night this is.
Purging the aft skirt booster with high-flow nitrogen.
I feel like I've been waiting to
Clear out any hydrogen gas that may be there. You can see the crew access arm is already retracted. When there is crew during Artemis 2, it would happen at T-minus 6 minutes. But out of abundance of caution, they went ahead and retracted the arm well ahead of liftoff. Crew during Artemis 2, it would happen at Want to point your attention to the base of the mobile launcher. Something wasn't done to reduce the power from the pressure caused by the rocket's ignition and thunderous sound. It could damage the rocket. So the ignition overpressure and sound suppression system will flood the mobile launcher with water. You'll see that sequence start at T-minus 17 seconds. Now coming up in less than 30 seconds, the ground launch sequencer will start bringing the high energy systems online, starting with core stage pressurization.
Got my orange shirt on here. Strong SLS vibes right now. T-minus 6 minutes.
Firing room 1 is completely silent as they listen for the next call.
GLS, go for core stage tank pressurization.
The core stage tank is now pressurizing to flight levels.
Hold to go no go poll in the chat
Liquid
here.
hydrogen tank now closing.
Are we looking, chat? Are we go for launch?
The liquid oxygen tank will come a little later. Now we're arming the Orion ascent pyros and transfer to internal power.
Oh, you can't hear me, Parker? Okay, hold on.
The launch abort system, or LAS jettison motor, is now armed. On this flight, the abort motor is inactive because there is no crew on board. Up next is the flight termination system, or FTS, which gives the Space Force the ability to destruct the rocket if it goes in
How's this
the
part
direction.
working? I'm still
Let's
in
listen to
flight.
that.
GLS, go for FTS arm.
The flight termination
All right.
system is now armed. Coming up
FTS
at
is
4
armed.
minutes and 40 seconds.
Sorry guys, I was quiet.
This is where the RS-25 engines and their bleed go to high flow.
Dang, mic
Tricky to
settings.
dial in.
GLS, go for LH2 high float lead check.
All right, LH2, don't
Good
stop
work.
us
We're
again.
past that. The cryo team got the LH2 engine.
I will take a
clean,
go
pressure
no go
loop
poll in the
dialed
chat.
in.
Let me know if we're go, guys.
They are now at the right temperature for launch. Countdown continues. T-minus 4 minutes, 15 seconds.
I was
Up
feeling
next,
sleepy.
GLS
I'm not
fires
sleepy
up the
anymore.
KPUs. Those are high-speed turbines which provide pressure to hydraulic pumps that steer the RS-25s. Stands for Core Stage Auxiliary Power Unit Start.
GLS, go for core stage APU start.
That now leads to the thrust vector control test at T-minus 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That can proceed now, and we will see the engines gimbal at the bottom of the core stage.
Oh God, I'm feeling it. I'm getting goosebumps right now.
At T-minus 3 minutes and 10 seconds, you will hear the go for purge sequence 4. That's a helium purge of the 4 core stage engines downstream of the propellant valve, getting the air and moisture out.
GLS, go for purge sequence 4.
And in just a few seconds, GLS will close the core stage LOX vent, liquid oxygen. The white vapor cloud caused from the super cold gaseous oxygen condensing the water in the atmosphere will disappear.
Go, go,
You
go.
see it coming out there now. And there it goes, it's closed. LOX vent closed, pressure rising in the core stage LOX tank to flight levels.
Oh my God.
Coming up in 15 seconds, look for that thrust vector control actuator test. Engines will gimbal.
Yep, you'll see those engines moving around. They have those these little cones.
And there they go. The 4 core stage
Let's see them actually
RS-25
moving.
engines,
There
gimbaling
they are.
around, testing the ability to steer the rocket into space.
SLS,
It will operate
SLS.
at 109% performance. Each RS-25 throwing down 500,000 pounds of thrust. All 4, 2 million pounds. All together with the boosters.
Thank you for your service,
8.8
RS-25s.
million pounds of thrust.
GLS, go for upper stage to internal power.
Now the upper stage has gone to internal power.
I'd say I missed you,
So
but
power is
at
removed
this
from
point, I'm
the
not going to
rocket's
miss
upper
you.
stage, the ICPS, and it's been switched to battery power.
This is the start
The same milestone is coming up for the core stage
of a beautiful moment
T-minus 1 minute
in our
and
future.
30 seconds.
Getting people back on the moon to stay. They're going to be riding this rocket designed for people first.
GLS, go for core stage to internal power.
The rocket's core stage, which houses the 3 flight computers, is now on battery power. So there is no more hold time available because there's no more margin on the battery.
Let's
so
go.
if we
Let's
have a
go.
hold, we'd have to recycle back to T-minus 10 minutes and recharge
No.
those batteries.
No.
The
No
count
recycle.
continues.
Now,
Note
T
now, shortly
30
after liftoff,
33 seconds is a cutoff mark, okay? If we get
1
past
minute.
33 seconds,
shortly
this
after
thing is going to
liftoff,
go. At
Mission
33
Control Houston
seconds,
will take control of the rocket, and
the
my
rocket
colleague,
takes over the
Leah
count.
Cheshire will take over commentary.
Okay.
T-minus 50 seconds and counting.
So
Coming
we
up
get
at
past
T-minus
33,
33
Charlie
seconds,
Blackwell can't
the
cancel this
GLS
thing,
will
the
hand
rocket
off
can
control
kill it.
to the ALS. This is the autonomous launch sequencer.
10 seconds and the
On
rocket
board
takes over.
It will take over command and control of the rocket. But the ALS will check, make sure there's no holds coming from the ground up until T-minus 2
GLS,
seconds.
Here we
for
go.
ALS.
And we are go for ALS.
Rockets
The
in
space launch
charge.
system is now counting down to liftoff of Orion on its maiden voyage to the moon. Launch team can no longer recycle the count.
That's right. The computer's got her.
Sound suppressor water now flowing under the ML. And here we go.
Here we go. Here we
Hydrogen
go.
burn-off igniters initiate. 7.
The water
6,
deluge system.
5, 4 stage
Sound
engine
deluge system.
start.
Here we go.
3, 2, 1. Boosters in.
Ah!
And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
Oh my God! Look at her go!
All 4 RS-25 engines on the core stage and 2 solid rocket boosters now propelling the vehicle at 128 miles per hour.
I'm sorry, guys. This is so great.
Good control on the roll from teams in Mission Control Houston. All good calls so far. Now 30 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1.
Yeah,
First
Leia.
milestone will be for the vehicle to pass the max Q about 1 minute and 9 seconds into launch. This is the greatest period of atmospheric force on the rocket.
Oh, those SRBs. That is a beautiful sound. We haven't heard that in a long time. Oh, I wish this was a daytime launch, man. We're losing so much detail on the rocket. There she goes, punch through the clouds. Man, if we get through the SRBs, man. This is the scariest part of the whole launch. We get through SRB SEP. We're going to the moon.
Now 1 minute, 21 seconds into the flight, traveling at 1,420 miles per hour. The 4 core stage engines are back at maximum thrust.
The SRBs burned for about 126
The next
seconds,
major
just a hair over 2
milestone will
minutes.
be for the solid rocket boosters to cut off and jettison about 2 minutes and 11 seconds into the flight, so about 30 seconds from now.
Yep.
Again, quiet here in Mission Control Houston as teams continue monitoring the flight of Artemis 1.
See some
We're now
onboard
16
cams,
miles
NASA.
downrange from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center, traveling over 2,800 miles per hour.
On.
Standing by for solid rocket booster
Yeah,
jettison
it's
and
gotta be in a
shortly
second.
thereafter.
I should have started the timer. They separated.
Confirmation that the solid rocket boosters have separated these 177-foot boosters. Now the core stage continues to power the flight of Orion.
That
All
was
4 RS-25 engines firing, traveling over 3,400
one of the more
miles
riskier
per hour,
parts of this
46 miles
ascent.
downrange.
There's
2 minutes and 36
multiple
seconds into
cameras
flight.
on board the
Hearing nominal calls
core
here in Mission
stage.
Control Houston. We've still got
They're
4
on
good engines on the core
WD-67 here,
stage.
that's what we're looking at
Next
now.
up, we'll be looking for the service module fairing to separate. This is 3 15 by 15-foot
Oh,
fairing
man. Get
panels,
us onto an onboard
providing
camera,
structural
NASA. Come
support,
on.
protecting the service module. Those will separate at about 3 minutes and 11 seconds into flight, and very shortly thereafter will be followed by the launch abort system separation.
Get us on the rocket.
Just over 3 minutes into the flight of Artemis 1, now traveling over 4,060 miles per hour, 83 miles downrange.
This core stage is going to burn for a
We just
long
had
time.
confirmation that the service module fairing has separated.
Okay. Oh.
And that the launch abort system pyros have fired, separating those from Orion as well.
So,
For future crew members,
we lost Leia. That looked like the camera that's inside the fairing on the service module pointing out. So we get the moon there in the corner.
we just heard the call for 3-engine press, meaning if SLS were to lose an engine at this point in the mission, we could still achieve a nominal mission. We would just have an extended main engine cutoff time. However, we still have 4 good engines, all at maximum thrust right now, powering the first flight of Artemis at 5,200 miles per hour, 148 miles downrange.
Hey, Risto, no, these are not reusable. NASA opted to not make these reusable, essentially for weight-saving purposes, and also they found that the SRBs were just ended up being too expensive to refurbish.
We're 4 minutes and 16 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1. So far, we've had a clean ascent. We saw those solid rocket boosters jettison about 2 minutes and 11 seconds
Go ahead,
after
Leia, answer
liftoff.
this.
Shortly after, we had the service module panels fairings separate, as well as the launch abort system. The launch abort system was inert for this flight, except to perform this separation.
And there's a camera forward-facing in Orion that captures
Those 4 core stage engines will
launch abort
continue to
system flying
fire
away.
and power the flight of Artemis 1, now traveling over 6,800 miles per hour, 229
On board
miles
SLS, the
downrange.
core stage, there's 6 cameras on Orion's
Booster
service
flight
module.
controller
There's
reports
2.
that the engines are looking good.
I'm not quite sure why we haven't cut there yet. There are some bandwidth issues that they have to deal with in the TDRS.
Our core stage main engine cutoff time is about 8 minutes and 3 seconds. We are now at 5 minutes and 11 seconds into the flight, 7,656 miles per hour.
So that answers just some of your questions, guys. I'm sure a lot of you guys know some of these details, but the SRBs are not reusable. On Artemis 4, I believe, there's going to be a new generation of SRBs that will fly. So NASA and Northrop are basically just burning through the old SRB casings that they had from the shuttle era for cost savings. The new SRBs are going to be lighter. I believe they're going to start flying on Artemis 4. So they're going to be lighter, therefore they'll be able to carry more. A mixture of that with the exploration upper stage is what's going to allow us to fly a bit more direct paths to the moon, and greater payload capacity. So right now, the SLS that's flying right now is the weakest version. It's the Block 1. There's Block 1B, and then there's Block 2. Block 1B is the SLS with the exploration upper stage, which right now we're flying with the ICPS, which is the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, which is like a baby second stage. ICPS is going to have 4 engines versus 1 on this one. Artemis 2 is the next mission and is going to carry 4 astronauts around the moon, Apollo 8 style. So if you're familiar with Apollo 8, it'll be similar to that. And Artemis 3 is planned to be the first crewed landing. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they shuffle the deck on this, because
Coming up on 7 minutes since launch today, now traveling over
Starship is going to be the
12,800
largest
miles per
bottleneck
hour,
to
563
get people
miles
back on the
downrange.
surface.
Again,
if
still
this
quiet
mission
here in
and
Mission
Artemis
Control
2 goes
Houston.
smoothly.
As we prepare for main engine cutoff, the 4 RS-25 engines are beginning to throttle down.
It's been a long time coming, guys, to get to this moment, to see this graphic. Not onboard footage, sadly.
30 seconds now until core stage main engine cutoff.
Throw your questions
All
at
core
me if you got
engines
any.
continue to throttle down.
Yeah, Rich, you know,
Now 7 minutes 45
NASA
seconds
did
into the
warn
flight, traveling
in
over
other
16,000
documentation
miles per hour.
that they may not cut to the video feeds.
Continuing to hear good calls
for
here in
reasons.
Mission Control Houston.
One,
We're standing by for core stage main engine cutoff.
the first mission, Artemis 1, has a lot more sensors on board, and the data that the sensors are collecting is much higher priority than any video feed. So
And we have confirmation of core stage main engine cutoff. Orion is now in Earth's orbit.
all right.
The flight dynamics officer reports that we have a nominal main engine cutoff. And we just heard the call for core stage separation. That means Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage are now flying free from the core stage of the Space
ICPS
Launch
showed on a
System.
spurt.
The next milestone will be solar array deploy approximately 18 minutes after liftoff. But before Orion stretches its wings, let's check back in with our friends at Kennedy Space Center and hear all about what it was like to hear the rocket roar off the launch pad. Megan and Kayla, I've got to hear all about it.
Okay, Megan and Kayla. I'm gonna pull your audio down. So, man, there was I felt like there was I had some, I thought here, and I completely lost it. Okay, so about the cameras, there's limited bandwidth, essentially, especially in these lower orbits. So NASA prioritized sending back all of the telemetry data from these sensors on board the rocket. That's going to help them inform just decision making in future missions. So the telemetry has higher priority over the video feed. The cameras on board could technically stream back 1080p if they like open pipes, but they don't. I'm anticipating on future missions we'll see them, because there's not going to be as many sensors sending back telemetry. But we're not going to see a 1080p stream from them. We'll see maybe at best like a 360p, 480p stream from them. Is there a point to SLS? It's too expensive to get anything done. Well, there's a lot of valid arguments about its cost, absolutely. But I'll tell you one thing, getting past NASA human ratings is extremely difficult. And say if you want the Starship route for crew ascent and crew descents, we want to be sending people to the moon for another 10, 12 years easily. Easily. It is really hard to build a crew-rated rocket for NASA today. We've learned a lot from the shuttle program and the Apollo program and Mercury and Gemini, as well as NASA has looked across all of their space programs and the issues that they've had to create several levels of safety and margin to make these vehicles as safe as possible. And that's where SLS comes in. NASA wants direct descent to the moon. They don't want to fiddle fart in low Earth orbit, doing rendezvous and multiple launches for a single flight. Although it may technically be cheaper in some ways, it increases risk, and NASA does not want to lose another person ever. It would be devastating, especially on an Artemis mission, if we had a loss of crew event. It would kill the program. It would absolutely kill the program. So to NASA, it's worth the extra cost to fly SLS. Then perhaps when other vehicles are more mature, that might be able to do the job, the SLS should retire. Should absolutely retire. I don't see SLS flying more than 10 times probably. But its flight cadence is going to be once every 2 years. Pretty much. Maybe every year at a certain point, but not for the first few missions. Yeah, it looks just like a KSP. Honestly, worse. I've seen some of these SLS KSP mods, and they look really good. I'm going to pull up the audio here, see what they're saying.
Blackwell Thompson is about to address her team.
Good for her,
after
man.
a whole lot of hard work and preparation
They
to
went
get to
through
this
hell.
moment. Let's stand by and listen to her now.
Get here. I'm proud of them. I'm happy for them.
Check. But you can't hear it in the room. Can you guys hear me? No.
Poor Charlie.
I can hear me, but the room can't. You can hear me? Because the guys.
Oh, poor Charlie. Yeah. For instance, you can't send Dragon to the moon as is. The rocket can't get it there. Falcon Heavy can't get it there, even fully expendable. And the capsule is just not designed for a long duration mission. The crew would be out of resources by the time it got to the moon. So the whole ecosystem needs to be redesigned from the ground up, literally. You need to find ways to increase the consumables on Dragon and increase the Delta V. And even with the Falcon Heavy, there's just not enough. There's not enough. It's possible with Dragon, but it would need a lot of development and upgrades.
Can you guys hear me? Oh, there we go.
Okay, there we go, Charlie. Pull her up here.
Is he ready for me?
I'm so sad about no onboard cameras.
Well,
though.
for once, I might be speechless. So you guys know I have talked a lot about appreciating the moment that you're in. And we have worked hard as a team. You guys have worked hard as a team for this moment. This is your moment. It is not by chance that you are here today. So I want you to look around at this team and know that you have earned it. You have earned your place in the room, You've earned this moment. You have earned your place in history.
Man.
You were part of a first.
When do I think I can go
Doesn't
to the
come
moon?
along
Probably
very
never.
often. Once in a career, maybe.
Not gonna make enough money to buy a ticket.
But we
buy
are
a
all
pit
part of
pass.
something incredibly special, the first launch of Artemis.
Good for all these people. What a special moment.
The first step in returning our country to the moon and on to Mars.
SLS is not going to be part of the Mars
What you
program.
have done what you have
By
done
the time we're
today
getting to
will
Mars,
inspire generations to come.
need a different vehicle.
So thank you for your resilience. You know, I said at the pre-test briefing, the harder the climb, the better the view. We showed the Space Coast tonight. What a beautiful view it is.
Well,
So
kind
congratulations.
of. It was just a dot. You couldn't actually see the rocket, but that's okay. That's okay. And it had to launch at this point because of orbital mechanics. They have to essentially time the launch up with the right location of the moon and the moon's orbit around the Earth. It's kind of like catching the ISS a little bit, how they have those instantaneous launch windows. The moon, obviously, a 2-hour launch window. But with Block 1 SLS, since it is the lowest powered version of SLS, it takes a while to get to the moon. So they have to be much more picky about when the rocket launches. But on later versions of SLS, there's going to be more launch opportunities because it's going to have more delta V. It's going to have more headroom to burn longer and things of that nature. Primarily with those SRB upgrades, it's going to be great. And the exploration upper stage. So hopefully we won't have many of these night launches, especially when we have people on board. They cut the tie. It's an old tradition. That goes way back. Beautiful moment. So some things to keep note. Once the cameras on SLS were capturing locally, and they were supposed to stream back to Orion data, but also the SLS, even after it detaches.
Yes, we're here in Mission Control Houston, still monitoring the Artemis 1 mission and the first flight of Orion atop the Space Launch System. So far, we saw successful liftoff at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time.
Okay. So, and also, as most people know here, once the rocket is launched, launch control at NASA is no longer in control. This is now a Houston show, which is why Leia is now on camera here. I'm trying to remember what was this last point I was trying to make. Oh, okay. So even though the core stage has separated from the ICPS, there's still power on it for, I want to say, almost about 30 minutes. So it is beaming back data still and offloading its memory cards before it goes to the great rocket garden in the sky. The Orion will be capturing the video locally, and then when it has the more bandwidth, it will be sending it back to NASA. But the bottleneck is the TDRS, the tracking data and relay system, which basically it's a series of satellites around the Earth that allows NASA equipment to communicate with the ground constantly, because it's not always over Houston. So it's their relay satellites, and that has a lot of bandwidth restrictions, especially with the space station actually taking up a lot of that bandwidth. So what will likely happen is when Orion comes back over Houston, it will we'll get some live pictures. And then once the ICPS is burned and it goes out. Oh, that was a live shot. That was a live shot from the solar array.
Prior to
There it is.
lunar injection
Okay, we're on the
burn
tip
to
of the
prevent
solar
any
array right
loads
now.
from breaking or damaging the arrays. And on the end of each solar array is a camera.
So
to
it's
capture
facing
imagery
back
for
at the
us throughout
ICPS.
mission, along with a few other cameras placed
At the
outside
end of the
inside
wing,
spacecraft to help us
there's a
monitor
camera.
and perform various other
And it points
inspections.
back towards the vehicle. And as they turn the arrays,
Of
you
course,
can
we
get a
recall the
complete
Apollo
360
capsule
view of
design.
the
There were
vehicle.
no solar arrays. We had fuel cells instead. So this design with arrays gives us the opportunity to stay in orbit longer since we practically have no limit to the
So
energy available
this
for use
is
by
going to be
the
very
sun.
common. So initially, there's one encoder right now sending back video. So Orion is cycling through the shots right now. It can only send back one feed, so it's going to cycle through all the cameras. So NASA doesn't really have any control over this. It's programmed to do this. And so the arrays are still extending. Wow, that looks great. Once these are all up, I'm sure NASA will be able to pick the feeds, but typically it's just rotating through all the cameras. So once we get past Earth orbit, we'll be part of the Deep Space Network, which, believe it or not, has much more bandwidth. And that's when NASA's gonna be able to send back the high definition video, likely only gonna be 720p. The cameras locally can record 4K footage, and the encoder on board can send back 720p. Or can send back 1080p, but they'll likely send back 720p to manage the bandwidth. So this view here, I wish it wasn't so fast. In the service module on Orion, there's a camera pointing outwards and there's a camera pointing down. So this is from the tip of the solar array, which looks great. We're looking at the ICPS there, so it's facing, the camera's looking behind Orion right now. The cameras on board Orion's service module are to monitor the fairing jettison. So that was definitely captured locally on Orion, and we'll get back some high-res footage from that for NASA. Just more of a visual confirmation, but also they want to see how the fairing separated in case they have to make any modifications to timing. Looks like the sun is on the other side of the ICPS. I wish they would stop cutting away from it, though. Clearly you can see in Houston they're getting a constant feed, but it is coming back in and out. Guys. Oh, I love me some back ahead action sometimes, but not today. Not today. I'm about to DM Leia. Please get them to cut. Or even to this telemetry feed we're seeing. That might be it for now. Did they just kill it? Is this it? Let's check the other feeds really quick, guys. What's special for this stream I just joined? Hi, Eric. Well, I'm sorry. You just missed the launch of Artemis 1. Like, that's what's special about this stream. And you were just doing it with me. You don't have to hang out with me if you don't want to.
Coming up now, in 24 minutes into the flight of Artemis 1, spacecraft now traveling at 16,500 miles per hour
what is Artemis?
around the Earth.
Okay.
We are in solar.
Did some Artemis 101 here. Artemis is NASA's new, not necessarily new anymore, but it is NASA's human moon lunar exploration program. That's going to bring humans back to the moon to stay. The Apollo program was not a sustainable model, where the whole goal of Artemis is to be sustainable and to make sure we have a permanent destination on the moon so that we always have a place to go. That's why the ISS has lasted as long as it has, because it's always been a place to go. So it's always getting funding. So the challenge that NASA has gotten or has brought upon themselves is to create a destination. That way they get consistent funding from Congress. If you don't have a consistent place to go with people on it, it's hard to get continued funding. So the Artemis architecture is supposed to be long-term more cost-efficient versus Apollo, but also designed to get continual funding. So they've learned from both the shuttle and Apollo programs, and so this program is kind of a blend of a lot of lessons built on there, and it's going to evolve. And the Artemis program is comprised of many different vehicles. Wow. It's comprised of many different vehicles. Falcon Heavy, Vulcan, Space Launch System, Starship, Crew Vehicle Orion, Crew Vehicle Starship. There will also be other lunar landers in the future. And it looks like on Artemis 4, Starship will also be the lander. So if we see any other landers, it'll be on Artemis 5. I hope that answered your question.
The current orbit is more of an oval shape than a perfect circle, and this burn will raise that point closest to Earth and make the orbit more circular. This will also include a checkout of Orion systems and any adjustments.
How long until TLI? Let me pull up the timeline really quick.
Critical to keep us on track, and it also prepares us for the next engine burn to send Orion to the moon. That's the translunar injection burn. That'll come up a little later, which is a longer burn, another firing of the RL-10 engine on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage.
Man, I can't believe we did this. I say we. It was that guy on the internet. I can't believe they did this. Finally.
We caught a glimpse there of those solar arrays, and with all four
ICPS looking good. I wish they would turn around and look at Orion, but we're not going to get that until after ICPS set.
coming up shortly, but for now, I'm going to toss it back to Megan and Kayla at Kennedy.
The arrays are like pointing backwards right now.
The moon will be different than the last time. We plan to explore more of the lunar surface and learn how to live and work there. With more on our destination, let's bring back NASA's Dan Hewitt with our new moon board.
Hey, thanks, Megan. I gotta be honest, we ran outside to catch it. I'm still shaking a little bit. That never gets old. That is always one of my
So,
and that rocket was massive.
TLI is not until 1 hour 37 minutes past launch. So we're a ways away. We're only at T plus 27 minutes. So we're still an hour and 10 minutes away from the TLI burn. In about 30 minutes, like actually 24 minutes, ICPS is going to burn for about 50 seconds to do an orbit raising burn, just to circularize its orbit around the Earth.
Each time delivering 2 human beings to the surface of the moon. Our last one was Apollo 17, and that was in 1970.
And then at an hour 37, T plus hour 37, it will do the burn to the moon. And it'll take a while to get to the moon. That's because of the Block 1 fashion. It's going to take twice as long as Apollo. Orion and its service module are much heavier than the Apollo capsule and service module, which is a big reason for it. SLS is comparable in terms of delta V, but our payload is heavier. It carries one more person, and it is a much better and safer capsule system. I mean, it's got a toilet on board, like it's got like all these kinds of things that allow crews to stay in orbit much longer, more consumables, much more redundant systems.
Looking around the equator like under Apollo, we're looking at the lunar South Pole. Now, why? So we haven't sent people since the 70s to the moon, but we haven't stopped studying.
When does it splash down? I believe the mission duration is 26 days. So this mission's going to go on until mid-December, like December 10th, I want to say, splash down, something of that nature.
They have images of all the different Apollo landing sites, and you can actually see the footprints, the paths they left in the lunar regolith of those sites.
Yeah, so Eric, right now the plan is not long term, yes, permanent base on the moon, on the South Pole. You'll see Dan here. We're looking at the South Pole of the moon right now. That is where the base will be. Because we believe that there's water ice in the bottom of the craters. Well, we know there's water ice down there, which will allow us to have, be able to create fuel and oxygen and things of that nature. And there's a lot of different options, as Dan's showing here. We don't know which one we want to make our home port yet. So the first several missions are going to be testing, seeing which is the best candidate for a lunar base. But we will have a space station essentially around the moon called the Deep Space Gateway. So we'll have a destination around the moon's orbit for astronauts to go to. And then eventually a destination on the surface for astronauts to go to. And the International Space Station will be retired. NASA won't be running the International Space Station anymore. The plan will be to take that funding, put it into the moon program, and then have a few modules on board some of these private space stations that have come up, Orbital Reef, Axiom's space station, the two biggest ones, and NASA will just be one of many customers on those space stations. They don't need to be running space station ops anymore. They'll be focused on lunar ops. The way NASA is looking at this, it's like building the railroad, building the national highway system. NASA needs to make the path, forge the technology, kind of take on some of the early risk because it's not really profitable. It is a huge loss leader. There's a reason why private companies haven't taken this on before, because how expensive it is. So once NASA builds the road, they'll start pushing things off to private entities to take on some of those costs, and then NASA can focus on the science, the research, and pour funding into that.
Chad, he's our safety guy, and behind me is Billy, and he's the experienced hydrogen tech out here.
And the three of you guys really, I would say, saved the day.
Oh, they're the red team. This is the red team that went out.
In there to what's called the blast danger
Get these guys a beer, man.
Trained to be able to do
They earned it.
operations on the pad while cryo is loading. Talk to us about getting that call, being told, hey, you guys need to go in there, and it was the first time for all three of you.
Take some
Yeah, all I
guts
can
to
say
go
is
out
we
to
were
the
very
pad.
excited. I was ready to get up there and go.
Really? How are you guys feeling?
Very comfortable, very confident in the test team and the procedures and our training. We
They're the pros.
did a great job.
Walk us. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
How gratifying it must be for you guys, because you train for this eventuality, but don't always get to do it. Billy was saying that he's been a Red Crew team member for 37 years, and this is the first time he's been called to go into the blast danger zone. So I know for us, when we're training for all of these eventualities, whether it's a spacewalk or robotics operations, you really want to put that training into practice. How do you guys feel like it went today?
Amazing. I still can't believe it. It's surreal to me. Just insane.
Yeah, kind of walk us through what you were thinking. So you get there,
so excited,
and what
guys.
is it? Just like
We have a
game
really
time,
fun
and
few
you're really
weeks ahead of us.
focused,
I'm just
or
going through right
how
now,
are
looking
you
for some
feeling?
screenshots from
Yeah, I'd
board,
say we were very focused on what was happening
Orion.
up there, just making sure
over 16,000
we knew what was happening.
miles per hour.
Because the rocket's, it's alive, it's creaking, it's making venting noises, it's pretty scary. So on zero deck, my heart was pumping, my nerves were going, but
Coming up.
yeah, we showed up today. I think as soon as we walked up the stairs, we were ready to rock and roll.
Coming up on
And they were
22
telling us a
minutes
bit about it
since
while you were
liftoff
working on
today
it. You guys were actually
Orion
just
interim
torquing
private
down
production
the
stage
valve to
traveling
prevent
over
or reduce the leak rate or
16,800
stop the
miles
leak.
per
Is that
hour.
right?
That's right. Just the packing gland, it was a little loose, so went up there and tightened her up.
Deploying now are
You're
part
probably
of the
still
Cells
like
module.
in
It's
this
comprised
oh
of
my
20,000
gosh moment like
motorcycle
all of us
components.
are.
The
You know,
service
has
module
it
was
actually
developed
hit you
as
like
part
the
of an
role
agreement
you
between
played
NASA
today
and
in
the
making
European
Artemis
Space
Fun launch?
Agency, or ESA.
I still can't believe it.
This is the first time
It's-
NASA is using
like I
the
said, it's
European
surreal,
system
just
as
amazing.
a critical element to power an American spacecraft.
I don't know about you guys, but
They're nodding along behind you, for sure. Anything you want to say to the launch team?
Man,
Again, this is a
I'm
big
so happy
day
for
for
everybody
the
here.
launch team, for you guys.
What an exciting
NASA,
day. I wish I had really more to add here,
I mean, this is
guys.
a historic launch that I think we'll all remember.
I appreciate you all hanging out with me.
we'll
I'm happy to
all
answer any
remember, really.
questions you guys have, or we can just kind of take
we
this
had
together.
a lot of people here helping us out, a lot of teams, firing room. I'm sure that was hectic. And, you know, NASA, Boeing, all the other companies did a great job, and we're glad to be part of it.
One thing I always like to say is spaceflight is a team sport, and I
This is
think
a big
you guys
team sport,
perfectly
so you know
demonstrated that today,
Boeing
right?
is
None
really
of
off
us
the
could
hook
accomplish
now.
this on our own. It takes a really complex
Boeing
team.
managed
All
the
systems, all
space
the
launch
technology,
system.
all the workarounds we might have to do to get a rocket.
There were a variety of
It's a big thing for
subcontractors and stuff, but that was their baby.
Thank you.
SLS, the core stage.
I appreciate you
Now the
coming on.
ICPS, that's a ULA product,
It's now been about 35
which is
minutes.
kind of a
Let's
Boeing
talk
product,
Artemis
but
1, Orion and ICPS are now free flying, so let's
so ULA, this is ULA's baby now at this point, to do the TLI burn, and then once Orion separates, that's a Lockheed Martin show. Lockheed is Orion and its service module.
About 17 minutes into the perigee.
Well, actually, Lockheed's like the parent contractor.
Coming up now
Lockheed
and
manages
24 minutes into
the
flight of Artemis 1 spacecraft, now traveling at 16,500
Lockheed manages
miles
the
per
Orion
hour
capsule
around the Earth. We are in solar array
and
deployed, and we have
the
confirmation all
European
4
Space
arrays
Agency
are
built the service
deployed.
module. But Lockheed's running like the show. There's point on that.
But we expect to continue receiving photo updates throughout the mission. It takes a team, though, to bring the imagery of Orion down to Earth. So let's meet them.
Let's.
And the mission
Okay.
itself is preparing to carry humans to the moon.
All right, so we're going.
The Orion
about
imaging
the
team is going to
video.
be monitoring every aspect of visual spacecraft performance for the entire duration of the
available to the
mission.
public.
The first time that we're going to be live streaming digital video from its spacecraft back down to the Earth from the vicinity of the moon. That's never been done before. What we'll be transmitting live streaming will be lower resolution,
Yeah.
more compressed, because we have to fit it into a thinner pipe, if you will. Every one of these cameras is in its position where it is, and it's configured the way it is for a very specific reason. We're going to be monitoring anything that we can see with the cameras for spacecraft performance. The imagery teams at NASA are composed of dozens and dozens of very highly trained, very specialized people, engineers, technicians, analysts. If we can see it, we're going to try and keep an eye on it. Imagery has been invaluable throughout the history of NASA. We flew cameras on Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, all of that stuff that we saw with the astronauts around the moon. It helps us detect the unknown unknowns.
For weeks.
It allows us to see things that we didn't anticipate happening before. So when we do fly people on Artemis 2, we can have a high confidence that everything is working the way it should.
Good for you guys. Great. Nothing necessarily new
I love
there.
getting a look at those teams that we don't
If
normally
you
see
see my video, if you haven't watched it yet, I did a whole breakdown of every camera on the Artemis 1 rocket. It's really fun to see what we're going to see here pretty soon.
Again, we're about 15 minutes away from perigee raise maneuver.
Thank you, Leah. Yeah, we wanted to take a step
Yeah,
into
Boeing
Orion and talk about some of the
and
science
Lockheed
that's
both
been
own
enabled
ULA,
today. So
basically, but the way they have it set up,
10 of these.
ULA
They're
is a
called
separate
CubeSats
entity,
because they're tiny satellites. Essentially, they're the size of
but
down, but then once they're deployed,
obviously Boeing and Lockheed
gets a lot bigger.
run the
Now,
show.
these are called secondary payloads.
Oh, hey, Parker. Thanks for the $5, man. I appreciate it.
Secondary payloads are.
Yeah, it just really means that it's not a primary objective of the mission. It's not. We're not relying on the success of these CubeSats.
So we're looking at the CubeSats right now inside the exploration upper stage. Not the exploration upper stage, the SCPS. There's like a bay that the CubeSats will deploy out of once Orion has separated. And one of the CubeSats will actually be tailing Orion, so we'll have like a third-party camera of Orion as well, which should be really neat to see. But it's not going to be tailing it the whole time, or once Orion does some of its burns, it'll fly away from that little CubeSat. Won't even have a chance. It'll be toast, but it'll be a pretty cool angle.
Significant on so many levels. It is a new frontier to do science.
So the primary objective is to test the Orion spacecraft integrated with the Space Launch System.
And it is designed to carry out the boldest of the bold missions.
But it's more than just learning how to travel in space. We're taking
I
a
can't
lot
believe
of cool
SLS
science
flew.
along with us on this first mission.
And that was
So as
perfect.
NASA plans to go back to the surface of the moon and then onto Mars,
we want to spend more time there and that's riskier business. So the more we learn about the moon itself and the environment where we'll be operating, the better we can prepare. We have 10 CubeSats we call secondary payloads, which are small scientific spacecraft of their own that will each be conducting their own scientific mission.
All of these payloads in some form
I'm going
or
to see if there's another
fashion
feed
will
I
help
can get us onto that's going to have
They are
some
going to
more
be
of these
studying the
onboard
moon.
camera
And they're going to
views.
help us understand what is the moon made out of, what types of rocks, what types of regolith, what types of ice, what's mixed in with water that might be
These
present.
vignettes are nice and all, but
to attempt to land on the moon. They're going to be studying the sun,
Understanding and studying the space environment or the space weather.
some different propulsion systems. These novel ideas will ultimately turn into the technology and the systems that we want to use going forward.
There's a lot of cool things going on between
Yeah,
all these
looks like
CubeSats
they've
that make up our
turned
secondary
off
payloads. Additionally, inside the
streaming on
Orion,
the
we'll
other
be
feed,
flying
on
an
the press
experiment
feed.
to study space biology.
Space biology.
Well, this is going to be a whole bunch of
is
just
where we study
puff stuff
the underlying changes
on the
that
Artemis
Earth-based
program, which is
biology
nice and all, but
undergo when they're in space.
Or basically, how does life
you can watch this at any time.
The level of ionizing radiation.
Just trying to see if there's any other options
Go
for us.
beyond the Van Allen belt. So you go beyond the protective magnetic sphere that
Don't
we
look like
have
it.
around us. You then get exposed to higher levels
Well,
of ionizing radiation. So
we still have about 40 minutes, 45, 50 minutes until the next burn.
Huge water tower for the water deluge that you see pouring out at like.
But yeah, guys, I mean, we can wrap it up here. I don't have anything else really to add. I wish that there were more angles for you all to look at. I'm really looking forward to seeing the imagery. I think that this imagery is going to be some of the most important assets that NASA is going to have to utilize for the next few years. So we're going to see some really beautiful stuff. So the imagery is going to be great. We're going to get some great data. Earthrise, again, that is playing to be captured. And yeah, that's it. Go Artemis 1. Everybody, thank you so much for hanging out. I know this was spur of the moment, and thank you for doing it with me. This was a pleasure. It was my honor. And would love to do another stream once Artemis 1 is at the moon. And we can go over just some of the imagery we were seeing and talk about how the mission's going so far. But thanks for hanging out, guys. Hope you all have a great night. I'm going to go back to bed. I got work in the morning. And I'll take care. All right. Thanks for watching.